3 counties, 24 cities, working together, accomplishing more than any of us could alone. Whether your roots run generations deep, or you recently moved to Greater Portland, you are a part of Metro, the nation's only regional government elected by the people. Planning for the future, preserving what we love. Let's keep our region thriving for decades to come.
I'm Laura Lepley, a Metro Park Ranger. Here at Oxbow Park, safety is our #1 priority, not only for our guests, but for our staff members. I'm at the Welcome Center and you're at the Regional Center. The council chambers are located on the 3rd floor. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the stairway to the 2nd floor, exit through the main entrance by the reception desk, and gather in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the reception desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you, and come visit us at Oxbow Park.
But he's here with us, Councilor Gonzalez.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I had no audio coming in at all, and I just texted the staff, but the audio just came through. Yeah, I'm here.
Great, you sound great. Thank you. And Council President Peterson.
Here, thank you. All right, we will move on to opening public communication and non-agenda items. Anne, will you please describe the audience our procedures for public communications on non-agenda items?
Yes, absolutely. If you are testifying in person today, please sign up by filling out a blue card from the back of the room and bringing it up to me. If you are testifying on Zoom or by phone, please sign up by using the raise hand function in the reactions or more menus, or by dialing *9. When it's your turn to testify, I'll call your name or phone number, and for those on Zoom, click accept to be promoted to a panelist. Your Zoom window will close for a moment, and then you will rejoin as panelist, and you can turn your camera on if you'd like. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes, and the timer will begin when you begin speaking. If you are testifying in person, there are timers located at your testimony table, on the wall, and on the digital screen. Please state your name for the record before testifying, but you do not need to give your physical address. And President Peterson, I do not have anyone signed up in advance, and I do not see anyone here in the chamber, and I see no hands raised.
All right, just scanning the crowd. Waiting for a second for anybody online. Anything?
Nope.
All right, we will close public testimony and non-agenda items and move on to our consent agenda. We have one item on today's consent agenda, Council, Resolution number 26-5560 for the purpose of organizing the Metro Council and confirming committee members. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll move consent.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilor Lewis and seconded by Councilor Gonzalez. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, the motion passes. Thank you. Councilors, with that, let me please recognize that we have a new Deputy Council President, Duncan Huang. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And I just want to also say thank you to Councilor Simpson for a year of being very present and very helpful in not only agenda setting, but also backing me up when needed. Just thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Round of applause. It's always a lot of work to, to do that, so thank you. All right, with that, resolutions. We'll move on to resolution number 25-5540 for the purpose of accelerating housing production across the region. To kick off our first business meeting this year, we'll begin with a housing production resolution to help ensure we have enough homes in our region for the people who need them in a market that supports affordability. We have Malou Wilkinson and staff here to support. I'll kick it off to you, Malou. Good morning.
Good morning, President Peterson, members of the Metro Council. We're really excited to be here today with your first council meeting after hopefully a good winter break. And we're here today for you to consider adopting Resolution 255540 to support accelerating housing development in our region with the Housing Production Accelerator Fund. So I'll go through some proposal highlights and talk through actions at a high level, and then I'll turn it over to Hal Hagedorn to talk in more detail. Again, I'm Malou Wilkinson. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning, Development, and Research, and I use she, her pronouns. But first, Councilor Gonzalez would like to add a couple of words before we go into our presentation.
Thanks, Malou. Appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Sorry I can't be with you in person, but really excited to have the Metro staff presenting this today. As many of y'all know, the Housing Production Accelerator Fund is something that we've touched on over the last few months, and its primary goal is to help us build the housing that we desperately need in our neighborhoods to make sure that this region is affordable for families, for people that want to retire here with dignity, and to really ease the cost of living crisis that so many people in Greater Portland are experiencing. I just want to say thank you to the staff for working really hard on this, to the CEO's office for making sure we find the resources, and for everyone here contributing to this moment becoming more of a reality. So just wanted to say my huge thanks, and I think this policy is going to help hopefully thousands and thousands of Oregonians that call this place home.
Thank you, Councilor. So if we could pull up our presentation, that'd be great. Next slide, please. All right, so if you'll recall, in December, we were in front of you, councilors, at a work session, and we talked through 3 potential actions that could be included in the Housing Production Accelerator, or along with the Housing Production Accelerator Fund. The first being a $5 million investment of construction excise tax reserves to accelerate housing production. The second being to adjust 2040 grant program naming. And the third, a limited duration waiver of the construction excise tax in jurisdictions that would simultaneously waive system development charges for housing. You had a great discussion, and summarizing what we heard from you and what we're bringing to you in this resolution today, there was unanimous council support for a $5 million investment from the construction excise tax reserves to support the Housing Production Accelerator Fund. We had great recommendations and advice from you all to wait to rename the 2040 grant program or to kind of refocus it until we were at a further place along with the Future Vision update. And we also received direction to continue to invest the resources rather than provide a waiver at this time. So that's what's in the resolution that's in front of you today. Next slide, please. I'd like to just take a moment to go over some context in addition to what Councilor Gonzalez provided. In 2024, the governor of the state of Oregon declared a housing and homelessness crisis and set a goal of producing 36,000 new homes statewide per year through 2033. This is a really ambitious goal, and it calls for Metro to deploy all available tools to accelerate housing production in our region to help address this housing crisis. And also, the Metro Council in December adopted Metro's first regional housing coordination strategy in December with Resolution 05-5535. The Regional Housing Coordination Strategy was developed through an extensive engagement process, and it includes actions that were supported by both our local jurisdictional partners as well as housing developers, market rate and affordable housing developers. And the Housing Production Accelerator Fund that this resolution in front of you today would move forward would help to advance 5 strategies that are identified in the Regional Housing Coordination Strategy. that align with construction excise tax eligible uses. Next slide, please. So as I've said, today we're asking you to consider approving that resolution, and it would direct the Chief Operating Officer, Madrigal, to create a Housing Production Accelerator Fund to be resourced with a one-time investment of $5 million of construction excise tax revenue. It also would direct the COO to take necessary steps to utilize the funds to support 5 specific activities that would speed up housing production and help to address the housing crisis. So with this, I'm going to turn it over to Hal Hagedorn, and how you can introduce yourself and give a little bit more detail.
Great. So next slide, please, Anne. Good morning, Council. For the record, my name is Hal Hagedorn. I'm the Community Investment Manager in the Planning Department. My team will be implementing the Housing Production Accelerator Fund, or HPAF. So as a reminder, the HPAF includes 5 actions identified in the regional housing coordination strategy, and those actions align with the allowable uses of the construction excise tax. And these actions will help local jurisdictions meet housing production targets and remove barriers to housing development. I'm going to go through the 5 actions quickly. The first one is pre-development support and technical assistance. This will help fund land use studies, site surveys, feasibility studies, and area plans to prepare for sites for development. This will also include grants to local staff and funding for contracted services to accelerate permit reviews, update development standards, and remove procedural barriers. The second is expanding Metro's Brownfield Grant Program, and this action will increase resources for site assessments and explore small-scale remediation grants to enable housing development. The third is supporting local housing production strategies to assist cities and counties in meeting their housing production targets. The fourth is broader technical assistance that funds planning and implementation activities that promote housing affordability and choice beyond the site-specific work that I mentioned in under Activity 1. And the last is exploring regional land banking strategies to assess opportunities for a regional land bank and develop a plan that includes legal frameworks, governance, and operational guidelines to support collaboration and long-term investments. Next, I'll outline the high-level steps for implementing HPAF. Next slide, please, Anne. Okay, so as far as the implementation steps, once the resolution is approved, we will work with the COO to amend the CET administrative rules. We will continue to consult with OMA to confirm if any Metro code changes are needed. We don't anticipate any changes, but we want to keep this on your radar. The third, we will design the grants and technical assistance in coordination with existing 2040 grants and Brownfield program staff, Sarah Breakstone and Brian Harper, both who bring valuable experience to the work. We intend to also gather feedback from partners and stakeholders. We think this is a really important piece of designing an effective program to ensure that the strategies and the program is indeed what the region needs to advance housing. And then we also want to make sure that we move quickly and get the funds and technical assistance deployed across the region. And in order to do that, we will need to add staff capacity to manage the program. Next slide. So finally, I just want to share some guiding principles for the program design. Hopefully this will be helpful context for you. The first is we intend to apply best practices from existing 2040 grant and Brownfield programs. So we don't think there is a need to reinvent the wheel. We have some really good processes in place. But what we'd like to do is prioritize flexibility and speed to get the funds deployed quickly. And so what that means is establishing clear eligibility guidelines and creating a low barrier application and streamlining review processes to get the funding out the door. We also want to avoid predetermining funding allocations across the 5 actions. So instead, we intend to offer technical assistance on a first-come, first-served basis to move funds quickly to projects ready for development and award grants to jurisdictions that are ready to move forward projects that align with the HPAF. And lastly, we will use lessons learned from the first year to evaluate the need and demand for the program and then refine the program in subsequent years. We are anticipating that it'll take about 3 to 5 years to expend the funds. It might be expended quicker, but we need to evaluate and assess first. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Malou for the discussion.
Thank you, Hao. So again, we're really excited to be here today for your consideration of creating this Housing Accelerator Fund. We know that we're in a housing crisis. We are excited to be able to do whatever we can to help. And if we can get the money out the door faster, we are happy to do that. But we wanted to recognize that sometimes it takes time to get money in the hands of those who need it. So that is the 3 to 5 year timeframe that Hao talked about. Our goal would be to get the money out as soon as possible. And so again, this resolution would direct the COO to create this fund, and it would direct her to take the necessary steps to utilize the funds for those specific activities that we talked to you about today. And we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Councilors, thank you for the presentation. Councilors, any questions? Councilor Nolan and then Hua.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks for the presentation. I'm interested in what your measurements of success are. And specifically, to me, frankly, a 3 to 5 year time horizon does not suggest the kind of urgency I think we need to apply to this investment. I'd like to know if you have an estimate of how many housing starts your efforts 1 through 5 will accomplish during the calendar year 2026. And then I'd ask the same question for 2027.
So right now, there are indicators included in the Regional Housing Coordination Strategy. We will use that as a starting point. We haven't designed the program, and so these are really good questions. So I can't answer that now, but as we start designing the program, I'd be more than happy to come back and share more about potential indicators and what we think we can accomplish in 2026 and beyond.
So if I might follow up, we didn't design this program with a deliver things on the ground within a year or within 18 months perspective. What will it take for us to contribute to the construction, or at least the start of construction, of housing that wouldn't happen without this program? Did we do any kind of triage? You know, here are activities that somebody else will do or will happen whether we invest at all or not. And here are other activities on the other end of the spectrum that no matter if we invest, they won't move the needle. And we should be concentrating on the kinds of activities where Metro's dollars will create housing starts that wouldn't happen without our investment.
Councilor Nolan, I really appreciate that. And I want to take us back to the development of the Regional Housing Coordination Strategy, and the actions that were identified in that strategy are those that came directly from our city partners and the housing developers around the region, that these elements are specific gaps that are not being addressed from other perspectives. And so these 5 elements are the ones that are eligible for construction excise tax funds. We can't yet judge the number of additional permits that are going to be provided based on helping staff our local jurisdiction partners that do not have enough staff to review permits. We're looking to speed up that permitting process. I think that we can easily evaluate after a year of trying to get this money into the hands of our local partners what the benefit is. But these are the actions that were prioritized from our local partners and from the housing developers in the region.
And when they prioritized them, Malou, did they say anything about what difference they'd make? How many more housing units they'd be able to produce if we did these things?
We assessed each of the team that worked on the regional housing coordination strategy assessed not a specific number of units, but the level of impact on a low, medium, and high scale, if you'll recall back to the regional housing coordination strategy. And these were actions that were not low impact. But knowing that this is it was the first regional housing coordination strategy, this is a new approach for us. We don't have number of units that can result from these actions yet, but we will be collecting that information and assessing the effectiveness over time.
I find it stunning, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councilor. I would also point out we're in a bit of a recession right now with a lot of unknowns. So the cities are probably struggling to figure out what their developers' interests are at this moment and whether they can get financing at all. So having this money available, but I would assume, Malou, that you'll be tracking potential developments with those and we'll be able to come back to us with some sort of numbers in the future to be able to try and figure out the impact once we know more about the context of what's going on with our economy.
Absolutely, President Peterson.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councilor Wong.
Yeah, thank you, Madam President, and thanks for the presentation and the thoughtful approach. I think there's a sense of urgency, but also I think with this, I view it as this is a fund that helps us play the long game in a lot of ways. I don't know that $5 million in itself leads to production necessarily, but like what are the tools to really like create the ecosystem and macro environment that facilitates greater production over time. So I do feel urgency around that. I think one of the key strategies I see here is that regional land bank exploration. I would like us to move with urgency on that one. I think this agency, we're supposed to have land for 20 years of development within our region. And I'd actually really like to think about how we have land for 20 years of housing production, as well, especially on the affordable end. And I guess I'm wondering, if you can just talk a little bit more about what we might see or work on in terms of a study for the land banking strategy, and like kind of what the state of current thinking and I know different agencies around the region are all thinking about land banking from the state on down. So like how do we coordinate that, and how do we come up with one regional strategy for land banking that really works for everyone? So maybe you could start there.
Thank you, Councilor Wong. I'm going to start and then I'll ask how to add in. So we also are really excited about the concept of exploring a regional land bank. This was identified as a high priority through the Regional Housing Coordination Strategy again, and we aren't the only jurisdiction that is interested in looking at this. We've been coordinating with the Portland Housing Bureau, and we're working on an agreement with them to work together. We also have a little bit of, we've begun the exploration and the development of a work scope for exploring a regional land bank. And we also, our team in PD&R and with housing, the housing department, we've been talking with Johannes Walde and the Social Innovation Program as well for potential alignment with other investors in a land bank. But how do you want to add anything about key elements of the program?
So I think the only other thing that I would add is we are beginning work on that, and this is building on work that was undertaken about 5-6 years ago. In conjunction with the Southwest Equity Coalition, we explored land banking that back then, and so this is not a new strategy, but the timing may be right in order for us to coordinate better with our partners in the region. And what we are hearing, and what I believe Erin and her team heard through the regional housing coordination strategy, is there might be good alignment with partners around the region in order to move this forward. So the work has started, and so this would continue and support that work.
Great, thank you. And I think when we're working across jurisdictions with various partners, like we have a unique thing coming together here with this fund, and it would be in my legislative intent to fund more of this work so we can move quickly. So that would just be an ask for the CEO to consider, is like, this is a catalyst for that. So please invest and fund that program. And I'm not going to weigh in on, I think these are for right buckets. I don't know how best to allocate it, but I do feel like the land banking strategy really deserves to be funded in the greatest way possible.
Really appreciate that. And I just also wanted to, say that we have essentially been land banking for many years through our transit-oriented development program. And so we have some expertise to build on here, and it's a really exciting opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I have a general comment which you may want to correct. Maybe my assumptions are wrong. I think it's always important. I think this is you made the point that this is kind of monies that we haven't been made available to sort of provide some of the glue to tie together some of the programs that we already have. But $5 million is not enough to really build significant number of units. And one of the issues, of course, is with these 5 items, they all are going to have their different track and their different timeline. It's pretty impossible until we actually set aside the funds to actually know how they're going to be impacted, whether the cities are going to respond and so forth. So I'm assuming that we're not going to see a lot of housing production as a result of this allocation, but we may set the wheels in motion for future activities. But I do have a couple specific questions. One is, and correct me if I'm wrong, the expanding the Brownfields grant program, that excludes spending monies on site development in brownfields, because for example, one brownfield site, the one that's going on in East County, could use up all that $5 million. So it's really just site identification, site inventory, preliminary, trying to get an NFA for the site and so forth. Is that correct?
It would parallel the existing brownfields program, which looks at the type 1 and type 2 assessments. Yeah. So,
okay.
And it isn't intended to address Superfund sites. It's small scale remediation projects.
But it would stop at the assessments and
Yes.
not move forward
Yes.
to the
Yes.
trying to fund the actual project development. Yeah.
Yes, because that is not consistent with the eligible uses of
Okay.
CET.
And then another question I had was regarding, and you mentioned TOD, and I noticed that TOD is not mentioned in here. Is that because we feel that TOD is already moving forward, or, it could be, we could use this funding to identify, in fact, even fund, TOD funding is generally less than $250,000. So there may be projects that could be additionally funded that are coming down the pipeline. So I'm just curious as to why TOD is not mentioned in this list. And maybe it's just, we feel that it's already taken care of.
Can I ask a question? When you
Sure.
say TOD, are you meaning site acquisition? Or what elements of TOD are you referring to?
Well, allocation of funds. Usually when a TOD project comes through, whether it's, and it can be through site acquisition, but usually we allocate a certain amount of funds based upon a certain criteria of number of transit development things. And it just provides an additional bit of support for some of these projects, some of which are funded through our housing bond, but some of which are not. They're funded through TriMet or so forth, or ODOT. So it's a big gamish.
Yeah, right.
So I'm just wondering,
We didn't necessarily call out TOD because site acquisition is not an eligible use of the CET funds.
okay.
But there might be other aspects of planning that could be eligible. But we didn't want to prescribe and restrict certain types of housing or development. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Because it's
I
more,
think
it's
so. I mean,
broader. Yeah.
it's sort of a complex thing because it's
Yep.
an ongoing program and you have a whole bunch of elements and you don't want, again, like you say, you don't want to use this for site acquisition. But there may be elements
Yeah.
that you can use it for.
Yes.
Okay. And I think for now, that's, yeah, I think that's all. I hope that I just want to comment, I hope that we're looking forward to expending these monies
Yes.
sooner rather than later, because I think the more we get these things, these processes funded and let the cities and jurisdictions know that we are willing to help them in some of these areas, I think the better things will be. And it'll speed up the overall process, although it may be hard to measure. It may be hard to come up with specific metrics for each one of these. They're going to be very complicated. But thank you.
Great, thank you. Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. Yeah, just to try and synthesize a comment and question based off of what I've heard from my peers, which is that I think maybe over 5 years now, there's been so much planning done. I mean, local housing coordination, statewide housing coordination, now a regional housing coordination. And I'm pretty sure it's accurate to say that most of these have been unfunded mandates from the state that have required a significant amount of planning capacity from our local partners, from ourselves, to just try and understand the problem that we have. And I think that we're doing the state and the region a huge solid here in terms of actually creating resources for folks to go and begin to implement these things. I am in agreement with Councillor Wong that I think in the scheme of activating developments and things like that, $5 million spread between 23 cities in the region is probably it's probably not the right measure. But I do think that in terms of the code improvements, in terms of enacting the things that people are ready to implement, could position the region to really build more housing. And also, I want to emphasize that as we are working to design this, wanting it to be strategic, but also flexible enough for a city like the city of Portland that has a massive budget, but then also a smaller city that might have a handful of planning staff. For different jurisdictions to find themselves reflected in this program in a way that helps them advance their goals, I think was also a really big part of that. And so different starting points and different communities will have different ways of wanting to accelerate their housing. But, I think that's what the point of the grant is, to do that. And I do think that as a part of our application process, as we go into actually defining the grant process, what I would appreciate and I think will be helpful is maybe asking a question in terms of, how will this fund result in additional housing starts, or how many units as a result of this funding do you think will be possible in a specific time frame? I think just to address some of the questions and comments heard here. So I guess my question to staff is, does that sound possible? And kind of what else would you add to my description of the last, maybe 5 to 10 years of planning around these kind of strategies on the ground?
Councilor Gonzalez, I think you did a really nice summary of what has been going on. we will come up with metrics that, as we, it's not like we have no definition for these different 5 elements. We do, but as we work a little bit more with our partners around the region to define this so that it is most useful for them, we will be defining those metrics that we can bring back to you to talk about how successful and how much impact this $5 million will have. It is a really small amount when you're talking about building housing.
Yep.
I think that we all recognize that. But when it comes to helping some of our jurisdictional partners speed up the process, it is not an insignificant amount of money. And so there has been a lot of overall planning, but the area where these dollars can really be helpful when it comes to looking at things like site-specific pre-development support and technical assistance, that can be hard to find the money for when it comes to helping understaffed jurisdictions review permits faster. That is another thing that is a true challenge across our region that we've been hearing about. We have a lot of small brownfields around the region also, and the more those are developed, the better use we're making of our land. And then the Regional Land Bank has a true opportunity for providing a lot more land around our region in the future if we can look for these leverage and collaboration opportunities with a potential land bank. So Councilor Gonzalez, I appreciated your summary of what's been going on. I think there's been a lot of planning. We do need planning in order to get housing, but we need to speed up some of these other processes that we hope we can do with this funding.
Thank you. I'm just going to round this out with thank you. Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez, also for working on this, and all of the council for thinking through these issues. I just want to go back in time for a second before I bring up my question. And when we were doing the planning to do the urban growth boundary expansion, and we reached out to all of the jurisdictions, and I talked to all of the mayors, this was the very issue that they brought up, right? Is that they didn't have enough planners, they didn't have enough permitters, they didn't have enough inspectors to be able to just do growth within the urban growth boundary, let alone an urban growth boundary expansion. We did have one community that came forward, and that was Sherwood, to propose an urban growth boundary expansion. And as we have just learned, that they are looking at an emergency ballot measure. I don't want you to comment on the ballot measure because it's already been sent to the ballot. So we're not in a place to do that. But I do want to bring up how this money may or may not be used with jurisdictions where we thought we had a clear path to getting housing built in an emergency situation. And now, because of measures that have been taken after, how is that going to be built into the criteria? Will you come back to us after those ballot measures go through their process and go to the ballot, and let us know if the criteria that you're looking at could possibly need to change, and what we support and what we don't support based on things like this?
Absolutely, President Peterson, we can come back to you.
Thank you.
About that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else for the good of the order? Questions for staff? All right. I will then ask for a resolution on a call for a motion on resolution number 25-5540.
I will move
President
adoption.
Peterson, move adoption. Oh, sorry. Give it to Councilor Wong.
No, it was Councilor
Go
Rosenthal
ahead.
who, yeah.
Oh, oop.
Councilor Gonzalez, go for it.
Motion to approve the resolution. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Rosenthal. It's been moved by Councilor Gonzalez and seconded by Councilor Rosenthal. Council, any further discussion? Seeing no hands raised, Anne, will you please call the roll?
Councilor Gonzalez,
Aye.
Councilor Huang,
Aye.
Councilor Simpson,
Aye.
Councilor Nolan,
No.
Councilor Rosenthal,
Aye.
Councilor Lewis,
Aye.
Council President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you. Thank you again. We look forward to you coming back with an update. All right, we'll move on to resolution number 265545 for the purpose of approving the transfer of certain interests in real property. We have a resolution that authorizes our chief operating officer to execute 2 stormwater and public utility easements with the city of Oregon City affecting our Metro South transfer station property. We have Marta McGuire here and staff to give a quick presentation and answer any questions. Marta, welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, President Peterson and councilors. Happy New Year. Again, for the record, my name is Marta McGuire and I'm Metro's Waste Prevention and Environmental Services Department Director, and I'm here with Sabrina Nelson, our Capital Projects Manager with the Capital Asset Management Department. As President Peterson mentioned, we are here to bring forward a resolution related to the required development of easements for the Metro South administrative building, and we have just a couple of slides to share. If we go to the next slide. Council is being asked to authorize the Metro Chief Operating Officer to sign 2 easements with the City of Oregon City, a public utility easement and a private stormwater facility easement. These easements are required conditions of approval under the Oregon City Municipal Code for the new Metro South administrative building and are necessary for us to obtain our occupancy permits. If we go to the next slide. By way of context, Metro South currently shares administrative office space with the site operator, and over time, staffing needs have outgrown the available spaces. As a result, a new administrative building for Metro staff was included in the 2019 Capital Improvement Program and is nearing completion. You can see an illustration of those buildings here. With the occupancy anticipated for spring of 2026, having this space has become ever increasingly more important as we have faced inclement weather conditions with both heat and cold, and having a space for staff to take breaks in has increased in importance. So I'm now going to turn it over to Sabrina to walk through the easements.
Yeah, thank you, Marta. So the 2, you can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so the 2 easements that are before you today, as Marta mentioned, we're asked, Council is being asked to authorize the CO to sign these 2 easements, and the first one being the public utility easement. It's required by the Oregon City Code. It's an easement that's allowing for the space for potential future dry utilities like fiber or cable, and it runs with the property. The proposed PUE is limited to a narrow area along the Metro's southern frontage in the right-of-way, and it doesn't affect current or future Metro South operations. And then the second one is the private stormwater facility easement, again, also required by the city's municipal code and runs with the property. And it allows the city to access and inspect the on-site stormwater facility to ensure it's maintained and stays in compliance with the city code, and also Metro's approved operations and maintenance plan for that facility. Both of these easements are standard land use conditions for typical development in the region. Next slide, please. So here we have a slide showing an aerial view of placement of these 2 proposed easements. They're highlighted in blue. The one on the right-hand side of the slide that goes north to south and is kind of a little sliver there along the property is the public utility easement. And then you'll see a little blue down kind of mid-bottom of the slide there. That is the stormwater facility easement, which also kind of corresponds with where the siting of the admin buildings are being placed. Next slide, please. So with that, we'll open up to discussion. Our recommendation is for approval of this resolution so that Metro can meet the Oregon City's land use requirements and obtain our permanent occupancy permits for these new admin buildings. There's no known objections, no budget impacts associated with approval to our knowledge, and the easements reflect standard jurisdictional development conditions. And with that, I'll turn it back to President Peterson for any questions and council discussion.
Thank you. Council, any questions for staff? Councilor Huang.
Thank you, Madam President, and thanks for bringing this forward. But I just wanted to understand a little bit more why this is coming to council. Is it because it's a real estate transaction? It seems administrative. So why is this here?
I'll let Carrie answer that.
Yeah, thank you, Council President Peterson and Councilor Huang. This is, I think, correctly classified as an administrative responsibility, but it is a responsibility of council. In council code, council action is required for the acquisition or disposition of real property interests. This is can be viewed as a disposition of real property interest because we are granting an easement to the city. I think we put this procedurally before council. We don't do these very often, so this is something that could go on, consent agenda when council, requests, or it can be a agenda item, but they don't come up very often. Metro itself is not engaged in a lot of development, but these are very standard land use requirements, but the real reason they come to council is because of council action required for either acquisition or disposition of property unless you've delegated that to the COO. And in this case, there was no such delegation.
I mean, would it be appropriate to delegate this in the future?
So we have a future conversation based on a request we've made of all, kind of a summary of all the types of delegations that the council has made in the past, and potential things that could be delegated. So yes, it is definitely something that Carrie has already flagged of whether this needs to come to us or not.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you for coming.
Good question. Councilor Lewis.
Yeah, thank you for this work. I just want to say that the work of getting the new admin space is really important. I think I've been on site with staff at Metro South at least 10 times during my term of service. And every time I walk away incredibly impressed by their professionalism, customer service, et cetera, but that they can do that while literally standing on top of each other is pretty remarkable. So this is an important project, and I just want to say my hat is off to the staff, and it's going to be growing pains going through construction. It always is. It's also going to be growing pains for our neighboring Beaver friend, who might lose some of what they think of as nice water supply right here. But it's the right thing to do, and just to the staff that, it's been a little bit of a journey to get here. We put that permit in, 22, and we're in 26. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a continued journey, so please keep us posted, or me in particular, with my interest in Metro South.
Yes, we'd love to have council out once the building is complete.
Well, having just gone down and dumped on Saturday, it was nice to see the buildings.
Oh, did you see it? Oh, great.
Yep. Oh.
Great.
Nice and white and bright and shiny, and such great traffic control still going on in such a tight space. Mm-hmm. So thank you. That, council, do I have a motion for resolution number 265545?
I'd move 265545.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Councilor Lewis and seconded by Councilor Rosenthal. Any further discussion? Ann, will you please call the roll?
Councilor Rosenthal.
Yay.
Councilor Huang.
Aye.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Aye.
Councilor Simpson.
Aye.
Councilor Nolan.
Yes.
Councilor Lewis.
Aye.
Council President Peterson.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. The motion passes. All right, thank you for all your hard work on that one. We'll move on to resolution number 265546 for the purpose of approving fiscal year 2025 through 26 funding for grants funded with the construction excise tax. We're back. We just had a small reprieve. Colleagues, you recall our 2040 Planning and Development Grants Program now recommends awards once per quarter to better serve the needs of our local government partners. And we have just gotten one grant in the legislation before us today to consider. And we have Hagedorn back from Community Investment Manager, along with Sarah Brookstone.
Great. So Ann, do you have the presentation?
It is up. It's coming up. I see it.
Okay,
now
I
you
see it. Oh, it's cut off. All right, thank you. Good morning again, Council. For the record, I'm Hal Hagedorn. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Community Investment Manager in the Planning Development and Research Department. Sarah Breakstone and I are here today to talk about the 2040 grant program. So before I hand it over to Sarah, next slide, please, I'd like to provide some updates and context. So to refresh your memory, the grant program underwent refinements last year, and using the feedback of the local government, community partners, and other interested parties, we moved from an annual cycle to a quarterly cycle. This is the fourth cycle that implements the program refinements approved by council last year. Earlier this year, we awarded a grant to the Portland Parks and Rec Department for revisioning of the Tom McCall Waterfront Bowl to spur development. And then in the fall, council approved 3 grants, a proposal from Lake Oswego for development code amendments to support housing and business growth, a proposal from Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability to prepare a redevelopment plan for Eastport Plaza, and then the third was a proposal from Clackamas County to conduct a land suitability study for urban reserves and rural reserves inside the UGB. So for this upcoming year, the next set of applications are due on January 16th. And Sarah will talk more about the process, screening committee, and proposals submitted during this current cycle.
Great. Good morning, Council.
Next slide, please.
Thank you. I'm Sarah Breakstone. I manage the 2040 Planning and Development Grant Program. Our process for the fourth quarter cycle of 2025 looked a lot like the other cycles. We started with some updates to our website and application materials. We send email reminders to our interested parties lists and accepted letters of interest and held quite a few meetings with potential applicants and people that were interested in learning more about the program and the program requirements and parameters. Full applications were due October 10th, and we received just 1 application in this cycle from the city of Gresham. Next slide. Always like to take a moment to thank our screening committee. This is the group that reviews applications, evaluates them against the grant criteria, and makes their recommendation to our COO. We're hoping in 2026 that you'll see some new names on this list. We currently have 8 screening committee members. Per our administrative rules, we can have up to 11, and so we are looking to add 1 or 2 new members to make sure that we continue to enhance representation on the committee. So more to come on that. Next slide. For today, I will run through the proposal that we received from the City of Gresham and then ask you to consider a vote on Resolution 26-5546. That resolution will approve funding for the grant project and allow us to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Gresham. Next slide. So the application that we received this quarter was from the City of Gresham to do some additional planning work in the Springwater District. You may recall, they received a grant in 2023 to do what they were calling the Springwater Plan District Relook. The Springwater Plan District was originally adopted, I think, in the early 2000s after that area was brought into the urban growth boundary. So the plan itself is more than 20 years old at this point. Haven't seen development happen in the district that was aligned with what they had called for in the plan. So in 2023, they engaged in an effort to take another look at the land uses in the Springwater District and make some recommendations and identify some strategies for refinements in the district that will allow development to occur on that land. This work, the proposal that we have in front of us today, will be a continuation or an implementation of the strategies that were developed as part of the 2023 grant. So this project is really about applying new zoning and comprehensive plan map designations and updating their zoning codes to enhance or to support housing development and development that is more aligned with current housing needs and business needs. Gresham's also undertaking on their own dime an economic opportunities analysis. They hadn't done one of those since 2002. And they are also making updates to Goal 9 of their comprehensive plan, which is economic development goal. So this work is really intended to, the proposal in front of you today is really intended to implement strategies from the 2023 grant and support and complement the other work that's being done, the EOA and the Goal 9 updates, to align efforts to provide housing and development in this district. They're requesting $360,000. The work includes appropriate amount of stakeholder engagement, community engagement, and will tie in. I think the timing is that the work that's going on now will be sort of wrapping up as this work is intended to start. So there'll be a little bit of overlap, and this is really intended to be a continuation, moving them one step further to being able to develop this area. Next slide. So next steps, I feel like just here not that long ago, so our next steps haven't changed much. We will ask you to have discussion and vote on the resolution to approve funding for this cycle. Total funding for this cycle is just over $360,000. This would bring total funding for 2025 calendar year to just under $2.5 million. Once we finalize an IGA with the City of Gresham, assuming the award is approved, they can start work, and we are expecting a number of applications for the first 2 quarters in 2026. The Q1 applications are due, next Friday, January 16th. We already have one, expecting 1 or 2 more, and then Q2 applications are due April 10th, and we've got some interested partners for that quarter as well. I mentioned this last time, we are all also in the process of considering some program refinements. We sort of committed to doing this quarterly process for a year. We're at that point now. And I think we've learned some things, and we see some places where probably some additional refinements to our admin rules and the program parameters are warranted. So we'll be looking at that, and you'll probably be hearing from us about that in the first part of this year. Next slide. Any questions?
Yes, thank you for that presentation. Councilor Huang.
Oh, thank you, Madam President, and thanks for a presentation. Just a quick clarifying question first. What's the substantial difference between the 2023 grant and in this application? Is it a continuation, or is it, I guess, what's the difference in the scope of work?
The difference is the first grant, the 2023 grant, was a higher level look at the land uses that were established in the Springwater Plan District, and some recommendations and strategies about refining those land uses. This work will actually do the refinements. This will actually apply comprehensive plan, map designations, and new zoning codes to land within the district, and update the zoning code requirements and standards themselves, as well as, and I didn't mention this, this work includes a infrastructure assessment to make sure that infrastructure delivery approaches are lined up with the new proposed new land uses.
Okay, and is this largely like a technical, legal, like land use exercise, or is there like a community engagement portion for envisioning what Springwater could be?
The sort of visioning piece is really part of the 2023 grant, and I think that's where more of the broad community engagement is happening. With this, it's more of a technical exercise, although they do identify a community engagement effort for this proposal and some targeted stakeholder interviews and a technical advisory committee. But I think this is more implementation of the vision that was created during the last grant.
And were you satisfied with the engagement process? Was it, I don't know, did it live up to our normal standards of engagement?
From what I've seen so far, it's not done yet. They're still working through that grant. So the deliverables that we have to date have been very satisfactory. And my understanding is that in the next 6 months, they're going to be wrapping up that work, and then hopefully hoping that this work will sort of start at the tail end of the wrap up of the last grant. So we'll have more information about their engagement probably in the first half of this year.
Not really a question, but, I just keep thinking about, all our conversations around targeted universalism, and be interesting in the future how we can maybe weave some of those concepts into 2040 planning grants. Like we're setting this, I think, shared universal goal for, a district or the Springwater, and it's how are we using that framework to engage kind of all the stakeholders and moving towards, kind of that shared vision and understanding. So just something to think about in the future as we keep having those conversations, but it seems like it'd be a good match for kind of the processes that we have here. But
Yeah.
We're all great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just first question, one slide, and you said the $2.5 million. I assume that's expenditures from our program. That is not, I could have read it as, this is how much they're spending on the Springwater Corridor Plan update. But
No,
That's just allocations from,
That's the
2040 grant process,
total
yeah.
amount of 2040 funding that was
Right.
awarded in 2025.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to make sure that
Yeah,
I understood that. And the other question is, how big is I don't get out to Gresham all that often. So how big is, in terms of area, is the Springwater Corridor? And where can I get a map of the Springwater Planning District?
Somewhere somewhere around 150 acres.
Mm-hmm.
I know that 107 of it was initially zoned industrial. And that's the bulk of it. There is some additional land in the Springwater District that is not zoned industrial, and that's the piece that I don't have a number for, but it's somewhere around 150 total acres.
Okay,
And we can share a map with you.
Okay.
We'll send it to you after.
thanks.
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion for resolution number 25-5546?
So moved.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Simpson. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And seconded by Councilor Huang. Any further discussion, council? Seeing none, Anna, will you please call the roll?
Counselor Lewis?
Aye.
Counselor Simpson?
Aye.
Counselor Gonzalez?
Aye.
Counselor Nolan?
Yes.
Counselor Huang?
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal?
Aye.
Council President Peterson?
Aye. The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to the next update. All right, moving on to our last resolution of the day, council. We have resolution number 265554 for the purpose of adopting the 2026 state legislative agenda. We have the opportunity to adopt Metro's legislative priorities and principles before our state legislative team heads to Salem for the 2026 session. And providing the overview, we have Annalisa Curler, our legislative affairs manager, and staff to help present.
Thank you. Good morning, councilors. My name is Annalisa Curler. I am your legislative affairs manager, and I use she, her pronouns.
And Kyung Park, I use he, him pronouns, your state affairs advisor.
This is the third time that we are before you. We were before you in October and December to discuss your legislative agenda for the short session in 2026. And today we are here before you for your final adoption. Our plan today is to start with a couple of pertinent updates for you before reviewing both your legislative principles and your legislative priorities, which are the two documents that make up your legislative agenda. And then we have a few other additional updates for you about some bills that we've learned are coming this session. With that, next slide, please.
So just wanted to start off. You use the same picture and it makes me hungry.
We use
the same picture every time and you make me hungry. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry for the interruption. There's so much gluten in there, but makes me hungry.
They could be gluten-free. I mean, you don't know, yeah.
Buckwheat pancakes. Just to remind you, we have our legislative breakfast in 2 weeks from today on January 22nd from 8:30 to 10 at the Oregon Zoo. Currently, we have about 25 RSVPs to the event already, so looking forward to a lively discussion and a chance for Metro and our state legislators to connect. Next slide.
We wanted to give you some updates on transportation at the state level. Since we were last before you, there have been some changes in IP 302. Namely, IP 302 has qualified for the ballot. It is currently headed to the November 3rd, 2026 ballot. This is an initiative petition that referred portions of the transportation funding package that was passed during the special session in September. Just to be clear, it does not refer all of the package that passed, it just refers pieces of it. And it has qualified and at this point will be headed to the November 3rd, 2026 ballot. Additionally, I wanted to share some additional news about the governor's plan around transportation funding for the state. I believe you all saw the announcement yesterday, but just want to spend a little bit of time reviewing it and happy to answer any questions as I am able on it. So yesterday morning, the governor announced a 3-part plan to address the state's transportation funding crisis. She used 3 R's, the redirect, repeal, and rebuild. So first up is that redirect bullet, and the intention there is to take a look at the House Bill 2017 transportation funding package and redirect some of the funding that is in that to cover ODOT's operations and maintenance for the next year or so. You know, there's not a lot of details on what that would look like. She was clear in her presentation to the Oregon Transportation Forum that it will involve a number of hard conversations unfolding over the next month or so, that it will require likely statutory changes during the short session to accomplish this, and that general fund is not on the table for discussion, and neither is transit funding. So that is the portion of her plan for what it would look like to redirect funding to cover ODOT's O&M for the next year or so. Her second part of her plan is to repeal, and that is to repeal the entirety of House Bill 3991. That was the special session transportation funding package that passed in September. And then the third part of her plan is to rebuild. And this is her commitment to a governor-led process over the course of the next year to build a comprehensive transportation package for 2027. She has committed to bringing together stakeholders, technical experts, and bipartisan group of legislators to have this conversation and to craft a proposal. And she intends to have it align with her economic development work that she has just kicked off as well. With that, I might pause and just see if there are any questions on this before we move on to your legislative principles and legislative priorities.
Just for the record, there's been a lot of discussion about reform at ODOT, and that was not part of the R's. And I would love to talk about that as part of our legislative agenda of how we continue to call for very specifically and not hide it, the reform of ODOT in terms of project delivery.
And I just have a quick question. Would the repeal portion of it prompt us to just slightly reword our legislative goal item regarding transportation, because it says support the package? Most of what we have in there is more general and more, and I'm just wondering if that's going to be, we might want to just reword a couple phrases in there so it does, so it looks like we're not, shall we say, opposing the repeal proportion. I'm not sure where we should stand on that at this point in time.
No, I appreciate that, Councilor Rosenthal, and I think that that will be, you know, the conversation with the entirety of your council about where we might want to stand on the governor's proposal to repeal the entirety of the bill. And I think we need to have more conversation about it and, you know, see what the proposal really is. This is, you know, was announced yesterday from the governor. Right. You know, I think there's more negotiations that will be unfolding.
Our principles, which are attached as one of the attachments, seem to be pretty, do not require additional changes as far as I can tell. They seem to be pretty solid, but specific wording relating to the past bill and where it goes is something we might have to think about.
I appreciate that.
Oh, go ahead, Councilor Wong.
Oh, thank you. On this one, you know, I was just reading, as you mentioned, about potential actions in the short session around the repeal. What are possibilities then? And I heard that they might use revenues or monies from other places and move those around. Like, can you speak a little bit more about how much of that is possible? Because I know some money is like bonded, but I just don't know what is movable, and then how will you think about that? Because I think there's some projects that this council has prioritized that might lose money. So like, how will you like address that, and then like what role do we have where it's like we're gonna have to make some hard choices? So how do we do that?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question, Councilor Wong, and it was one of the first conversations that I had here internally with Metro staff about, you know, okay, so what does this actually mean, and what does it mean in terms of what could potentially be on the table? I think we, you know, again, heard very clearly from the governor that transit funding is not on the table to be diverted to fund O&M, and neither is general fund, that it is meant to just be those transportation dollars, and particularly the ones that are in House Bill 2017. Obviously, some of them are already obligated, some of them are already spent. That's probably likely not on the table. But I've asked Metro's staff to start to do that analysis about what actually would be kind of eligible for the conversation. And, you know, the governor committed yesterday to, you know, that conversation unfolding, acknowledging over the next month or so, acknowledging that it was going to be a very hard conversation, and that there were going to be, you know, priorities that I think many entities had that might, you know, be temporarily at least not funded. So I think it is something, I agree with you, I think it is something we will be watching closely and monitoring closely and bringing back to you all for consideration.
And I think if we're talking about legislative principles, I'm just speaking for myself, like one principle I would be interested in is how do we make sure our streets are, you know, maintained and plowed, and like, to me in the near term, that, you know, means a lot to myself and the constituents to make sure they can get to school and work and all that. So like, that's a higher priority than potentially other like big projects down the line. But, yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And we can get that information to you when we know what is really in the universe for consideration from a technical perspective, and then additionally, candidly, from a political perspective.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay,
Councilor Nolan.
Thanks, Madam President. While we're on the topic of recent news, I think we have to be mindful here of information from the IBR project team and recent news coverage of the drastic increase in their estimate for the construction of that project, and how, I mean, we've got several big projects that are ambitious and trying to do fabulous things. And yet, while they're capital projects, they impinge on the gas tax. And I don't even know how to frame Metro's point of view on this. but I don't think we can ignore the pressure on those capital projects in the in conversation about transportation funding.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Councilor Nolan. And I think, again, when we have a better sense of really kind of what's on the table for discussion, we'll be bringing that forward to you all.
Thank you. I think we've gone through the questions. Thank you.
So first, I'd like to talk about our legislative principles. These legislative principles up for adoption today are the same as the ones that were adopted for the previous session in 2025. They were recently updated prior to the 25 session. Legislative principles are divided into two sections. You have your general or overarching, and then your issue-specific principles. Principles are meant to be evergreen guiding principles that give staff direction that we can rely on for bills that are not specifically called out in our legislative priorities. Next slide. Also up for adoption is our legislative priorities. Legislative priorities are session-specific around bill concepts that your staff has identified that might be coming up for this session. We went through a list of priorities over the last two work sessions in detail, and just wanted to highlight these really quickly. So next slide. So here are the list of priorities identified for this upcoming session to make up your legislative agenda. I will just go over these very briefly. First, we have serial communications. This would recommend supporting changes to the public meetings law to clarify prohibited serial communications and reduce confusion for public officials. Next is food and beverage. Supports an exception to requirements that food and beverage must be considered a form of compensation. As a side note, Metro is in compliance with current law, but this legislation would support our local governments, for example, volunteer boards with charter restrictions on receiving any form of compensation. Next item is, in anticipation of budget cuts, we'd like to prioritize protecting critical services so we can ensure a prosperous economy, clean and healthy environment, and high quality of life for our constituents. Next, in housing and homelessness response, stability will be the key important factor here as these systems are interlinked and connected. We recommend supporting legislation that protects the stability of the regional and local housing and homelessness response systems.
Next up on your priorities is urban growth management. This is a kind of evergreen Metro legislative priority, knowing how important urban growth management is to our council. I do just want to flag that we plan to have further discussion in particular about a concept related to industrial land in Western Washington County that we will be bringing forward to you all. So just flagging that for future consideration and discussion by council. An additional piece of your legislative agenda is the transportation package. We already spent a little bit of time on this, but this is so that we are reflecting the work that we imagine will occur both during short session and ongoing in 2026 to build towards a comprehensive transportation package and the needs that we have in our region and our state to fix our transportation system.
Next is battery extended producer responsibility. This would create a new extended producer responsibility program for batteries statewide and help reduce fires and prevent harmful chemicals from reaching landfills.
The final item on your legislative priorities is speculative ticketing, and this is a bill that would ban the practice of speculative ticketing, and it would essentially require that you have a ticket in your possession in order for you to sell it. It is an important consumer protection issue that has been coming up at P5. So that concludes the portion of our presentation related to your legislative principles and legislative priorities. I do just want to go over a few additional bills and concepts that we are aware that are coming and give you a few updates on those. So first up, we anticipate that the transient lodging tax increase to fund wildlife conservation will be returning for the short session. And Metro will be neutral on that bill. This will be about balancing the need for wildlife conservation funding with the needs of the convention center and our hospitality system at large. An additional bill and concept I would like to bring up has to do with the Blazers. I'm sure we all read the news in the newspaper yesterday that there will indeed be a short session ask around the Blazers and the Moda Center in particular. We don't have all of the details yet, but in line with Metro's previous support for things like Hillsborough Hops and Metro League Baseball, we anticipate bringing that forward to you all for consideration when we actually have those details. We know it will be of interest to many of you. And then the final piece, and somewhat along similar lines in that we don't have a lot of details yet, but as you recall, prior to the holidays, the governor announced her economic prosperity agenda. We do anticipate that there will be pieces of that will need to move during the short session. Don't have a lot of details for you yet on exactly what those pieces are, but knowing that economic development is an important issue for this council, we will be bringing those forward for your consideration when we have more details. Next slide, please. That concludes our presentation today. We're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions, councilors, comments? Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, I was question and comment actually. Well, the first comment is I like what is in our legislative priorities. I would have be a little stronger in my wording regarding the serial meetings stuff. We were being very nice. I would say, you know, don't tell us to do what you don't do. But that's just an aside. My concern really is sort of a twofold issue, and it has to do with Washington County. My understanding is that they will be introducing a bill that's going to lead toward adding a large chunk of land to the urban growth boundary, 1,800 acres of extremely prime farmland, something that we have tried to avoid. And associated with that is the issue of data farms. And I'm just wondering if any legislation is going to be, we seriously need to address data farms. As you know, Oregon is the third largest concentration of data farms in terms of energy use in the world. And they are not a good economic development model. We are very strongly supportive of good economic development. So I'm just wondering if you know of anybody who's going to introduce any bills to do some restrictions, some taxation issues, et cetera, around that. I know people have been talking about it, but I'm just wondering what you've heard.
No, I appreciate the question, Councilor Rosenthal. Yes, it has definitely been a topic of discussion in this region and has been a topic of discussion across our state. I am not aware of any legislation for short session, but I will also confess that it is not an area that we have necessarily really closely tracked. So let me dig into that and get back to you.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor Huang.
Oh, thank you. I know there's a lot of conversation around like our relationship with the federal government in terms of a tax code and things like that. Are we taking any positions on like the revenue tax conversations?
Councilor, are you referring to like the disconnect policy or just like income taxes in general?
Well, both.
I think, you know, because Metro administers the supportive housing services tax, protection of local income taxes will be a high priority at all times. As far as the disconnect conversation, for me, it seems like the position Metro would take, I guess what I would ask is, what would we as Metro be adding to the conversation? From which element would we be coming in? The current coalition, you know, you have a lot of community-based organizations, some public and private unions in support of certain elements of disconnect. You have the opposite end of the spectrum of mostly business and industry supporting just keeping the status quo. I'm not sure exactly where we would land in that conversation. I think there's benefits and disadvantages on both sides for Metro to kind of weigh in. We're getting pulled in kind of all directions on that with a lot of some of the work that we're trying to do in the future as well.
So you're saying neutral, basically?
I think at this point, I would recommend we start at a neutral stance. And just to add to that, there hasn't been much clear signaling from legislators on how they're going to be moving forward with this. I mean, I read every day from legislative newsletters that even legislators themselves are kind of in the dark about what to do. So it seems like it might be something that we need to track as session starts. We have a revenue forecast coming out February 4th, so that's the first week of session, the first Wednesday. That will really give us a clear idea of how bad or how good is the situation as far as the deficit goes. We know that the most previous revenue forecast shrunk that deficit, gave us a little bit of breathing room, and depending on what the February revenue forecast dictates, will really set the tone for what's going to be done during session.
Okay. I appreciate your analysis. Thank you.
Can I have one more question?
Sure.
One more question. One of the things that's been talked about in some circles is a constitutional amendment for a clean environment. Is that going to come up in this session, do you think?
I think it's possible, yes, that it could come up. I don't know that, I don't think I would put it on a high likelihood of passing, if that makes sense during short session.
Okay.
You'll recall it's usually budgetary tweaks, technical fixes, those types of things.
But sometimes things sneak through in the short session.
Sometimes they do, no, absolutely. So it's a non-zero chance, to be clear, but haven't heard of a really robust movement where that's seeing like a likelihood for short session, but we can also look into that a little bit more for you.
It is something that if it does come up, well, at some point, if it does come up and has support, we may want to discuss it in more detail because it has a lot of implications. Thank you.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, President Peterson. Quick question for our team. Over the last few weeks, the governor announced the Prosperity Council and kind of some general initiatives around that. I know that there's still quite a few steps that the state needs to take in hiring and like seating the committee and all that stuff. But do we anticipate any legislation being proposed by the governor or anything like that, or key legislative leadership around some of the items that they mentioned in the launch? And if not, I am curious to see how in this calendar year, Metro can continue to lean into our role in economic development in partnership with the state.
Absolutely, Councilor Gonzalez. Yes, we do anticipate that there will be some legislation coming out of the governor's office as it relates to her prosperity initiative. And then I think additionally, we might see some additional legislation coming from the House Economic Development Committee and other legislators that are very interested and engaged in economic development. And when we have a sense, I think there have been a lot of different ideas, frankly, that have been floating out there, and not everyone has fully landed on things yet. But when we have some certainty, we do plan to bring those forward for council's consideration, knowing the importance of economic development to you all.
Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, just a technical question. What is the date at which we will see what bills have been introduced? And I mean, they're starting to be released now. I know some of the committee bills, but at what is their deadline date for publishing what is actually going to be introduced?
That's a very good question. So do you have them off the top of your head?
Legislative concept drop return deadline is next Friday.
Okay.
And then obviously, Councilor, as you know, there's a difference between bills that are pre-session files and bills that are not. So bills that are pre-session filed do end up coming, back for sure before the very start of session, and so everyone can see them. And then bills that are not pre-session filed can just drop as they drop during the short session.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, seeing no other hands raised, do I have a motion for resolution number 265554?
I'd move 265554.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved by Counselor Lewis and seconded by Counselor Rosenthal. Any further discussion, counselors?
Good luck.
Yeah,
There will be
to
more
all of
discussion
us.
later.
And with that, Annalee, please call the roll.
Counselor Nolan,
Yes.
Counselor Gonzalez,
Aye.
Counselor Simpson,
Aye.
Counselor Huang,
Aye.
Counselor Rosenthal,
Aye.
Counselor Lewis,
Aye.
Council President Peterson.
Aye, the motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you on that. All right, we'll move on to Chief Operating Officer Communications. Anything for the good of the order?
Thank you, President Peterson. Just a note that our budget process for fiscal year 27 is underway. Departments have been working the last few months to put together their base requests for next year, and we'll all be submitting those requests to me on Friday. So it's just a moment in time to note, because before you know it, we will be having budget briefings, and you will be deliberating in the spring. So we are here. Happy 2026. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Counselors, any counselor communication? Okay, seeing none. Oh, were you, I thought you were.
I was preemptively logging off.
All right, first meeting of the year is now adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.